Welcome back to the Grow Your Nutrition Business podcast. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, we believe something as fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated, which is why we focus on a simple, habit-based approach. We know that helping your clients become the best and healthiest versions of themselves isn't just about what they eat or coming to the gym a few hours a week. We, as gym owners and coaches, have to focus on a holistic approach, looking at support systems, stress management, sleep, mindset, lifestyle, and of course, exercise and nutrition. I'm your host, Nicole Coyne, registered dietitian and founder of Healthy Steps Nutrition, CrossFit HSN, and HSN Mentoring. I'm also the author of The Basics of Nutrition Coaching, CrossFit Preferred Nutrition course. In this podcast, I'm going to teach you how to make one step at a time to becoming the best nutrition coach and building an awesome habit-based coaching program. Today's guest is my husband, Jason. Jason runs CrossFit HSN and handles most of the operations at Healthy Steps Nutrition HQ and handles all of the financials for HSN Mentoring. It wasn't always this way. In fact, prior to 2019, he was only coaching one night a week and had no clue about anything in the businesses beyond his coaching classes. People always ask us, how is it working with your spouse? How do you guys do it? Well, today we are sharing the backstory that led him to leave his full-time position at the fire department as a captain to help me run the operations at Healthy Steps Nutrition. We discussed the challenges that we had early on and 3 biggest pieces of advice we have for couples who work together and co-own businesses together. I can honestly say Healthy Steps Nutrition wouldn't be where we are today without Jason leaving the fire department to come on full-time with Healthy Steps Nutrition. We've been able to say yes to opportunities because we are doing this together. He's my best friend, and I'm honestly blessed to be able to work with him every single day together. Well, enjoy this episode, and just a warning, he is often inappropriate, and we just learned to love him for it. Enjoy. Jason, welcome to the Grow Your Nutrition Business podcast.
Well, thanks for having me again.
I'm excited to talk about today's topic because it is such a common thing in CrossFit gyms. And most couples don't know how to handle it.
I don't think really it's addressed anywhere. Like where in the rule book or the playbook or any book does it say, hey, this is how you should work with your spouse in the fitness industry. And that is a very common theme, especially with a lot of our clients.
Yeah. So we had the OMP meeting last week, the Owner's Mastermind Project. And first time you joined.
Well, I have a PT session every day at 12 o'clock. So, I mean, I was hoping you could move the meeting for me and, the other 60 people wouldn't, but I understand. But yes, I was at the first OMP. It was awesome. It was good to see a lot of the gym owners that run our program. And it was good to just kind of hear what other gym owners are going through and be able to contribute to that conversation a little bit.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that came up was, how do you work with your spouse? And I think for people to understand how we work well together, I think there needs to be a little bit of a backstory. So I started Healthy Steps Nutrition when I moved down to South Florida before I knew you. So BJ before Jason.
Okay.
And it was kind of my thing, right?
Yep. You were working at the hospital. You were doing personal training sessions. You were doing nutrition coaching. You were all over the place.
I was a hot mess all over the place.
You were hot though.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So then we end up meeting at a CrossFit gym, at a CrossFit competition.
Yep.
You were with Fred, one of your best friends.
Yep.
And you guys had the kids on your shoulders, and I thought you were super cute, but I was like, are they together? I don't really know.
Maybe. You never know. I mean, it's okay.
I wasn't sure.
Okay.
So then we end up starting to hang out, started a date, and at one point in our relationship, you said, Nicole, you're not happy at the hospital. You need to leave.
Oh, you just fast forwarded like 2 years. So, okay. Yeah. So you were at the hospital and you were juggling all these things. And I was at the fire department and it got to a point where it was just craziness and you needed to focus on one thing and be really good at that.
So you kind of pushed me to leave the hospital, do Healthy Steps Nutrition. We started getting bigger.
Yes.
And bigger.
Yes.
And then fast forward a few years, you're a captain at the fire department at this time, and you're not getting good sleep. You're helping, like your passion for helping people is there, but you're on the opposite side of the healthcare, sick care system. And now you're not happy at the fire department. You're like, Nicole, I want to leave.
Yeah. I had 17 years total in the fire service. And, my kids, our kids were at that age where they were 7-ish and 8, 9, and they were getting to the point where we were having fun with them, and I wanted to be around more, and I wanted to be the best dad and the best husband. And we all know that sleep deprivation will make anybody cranky. And so, yeah, I think I got to the point where I was not enjoying going into work every day. And that's a big thing, right?
Absolutely. And then it was a combination of that. I started traveling more to do speaking events.
You were getting busier.
And I'm like, man, I wish you could come with me, but it was not possible for you to take off from the fire department. And then it's more time away from the kids to be able to come with me. So we go to Greece. And the point at that point was like, all right, well, you're going to take FMLA.
Took a couple months off, said I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. And if I wanted to, that was a big deal for me. I mean, that was my whole identity. As a man, that was my identity. I had a great salary. I had, 17 years of tenure. I had vacation and sick time. I had some seniority and, all those benefits. We just talked to a gym owner last week in New York about, ripping that Band-Aid off from benefits and security to go out on your own. And for me to not, I felt like, man, Nicole's going to support me. And as a man, that was tough for me. It was difficult.
But I think we both have strengths, and, you're so organized and really good with the numbers and able to manage the gym so well so that I can focus on the other company. So you leave the fire department, FMLA. So then we get back, and we had a GM at the time. She ends up switching careers.
Yep.
And this is the pivotal point, in my opinion, where we figured out, can we work together?
I went from coaching 1 day a week and just kind of going into the gym, making sure things were groovy and clean. And then, it was.
So then this was a super interesting time. And I think this is the point where every couple that works together really has to figure it out. Because at some point, everyone will have to deal with this. There's typically, at least from all the gym owners we talked to, except one couple, it was one spouse was doing it and then the other one jumped in. And when the one spouse is doing it, they understand all the systems and processes and everything. When the other one's jumping in, the one spouse all right, I can't do all this. Here you go. Which is kind of what happened. I feel like we just heard this between Autumn and Rob. And we just heard this last week on the OMP call. It was,
it's very similar messages, right? And so this is a great time to talk about it. And let's talk about some of the friction that, we discovered. And luckily that was almost 3 years ago, but let's talk about it. Cause I think now looking back, I wish we would have probably done some things differently.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, I was trying to juggle all of these things and managing schedule, managing the business side of the CrossFit gym. And then at the same time, managing all of that for mentoring, it wasn't going to be possible. So you got kind of thrown in. And I think there was some friction there with us because I kind of thought, all right, well, you're a really smart guy.
Thanks.
Here you go. And you unfortunately didn't have the skill set at the time. Now you're wonderful with Zoom and all the things. But at the time, you didn't work from a computer. So you didn't know a lot of that stuff. And there was a lot of frustration between both of us because I was giving you stuff and you were not.
Well, I'm just going to say this. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm an old dog. And I think that, your expectations, you went from having a GM that did, all these things. And then when you wanted to hire someone else, she took on even more roles because she wanted to make more money. And so there was a lot of expectations on your side. And when I came on board and said, okay, I can run the gym, there was definitely, it was a learning curve for me. I think that, when I came, we decided that I was going to leave the fire department. It was going to be, hey, you're going to take sales calls. You're going to be a nutrition coach. You're going to run the gym. You're going to do the scheduling. You're going to do some social media stuff. You're going to write cards out to everybody at the gym. And you're going to do all the PT sessions too. And we're going to.
It was way too much.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, by the way, you got to Zoom them. And I'm like, what is Zoom a car? I don't know what Zoom is, so it was, the fire department was different, and I was good at what I did at the fire department. And I never really got that chance to learn about the back end of things. And I think the hard part for me was, yes, I'm a little older. Technology. I mean, if you know Generation X and Generation Yers, like there's Generation Xers, they like to keep things the same way. They don't like change, and that's me. And I'm defensive, which is as part of my personality. I've learned to grow, and it's really out of my comfort zone to take feedback. And I think that there's a way to learn here, and a way that we can help you or help other people just kind of think about, hey, this is what Jason and Nicole went through. How can we avoid some of these things? And yeah, let's talk about that. Let's dive in.
Yeah. So I think, looking back, one of the things that I made a mistake on is kind of, hey, here's all the things that we need to get filled. You're the closest person. You left the fire department. Here's things that need to get done. And they weren't necessarily things that you were passionate about or that you loved, but there are things that you're super passionate about and that you're really good at and that you do love. And like, who doesn't want to focus on those things? Right. So, when we think about, all right, what are the things that we've learned and the biggest pieces of feedback? The first thing, I think, if you're working with your spouse, we need to figure out, all right, what are the roles and tasks and what are the lanes that you're staying in? So
important. I mean, there are things that I'm passionate about and I'm good at. And guys, think about this from any perspective. You have somebody on your team. I mean, our pastor at church, says, they use the DISC test. Everybody uses these personality tests, right? It's so good from so many perspectives because you know what they're good at. You know how they're going to react. You know how they need to be coached. You know their hot buttons. You know what not to say. And we didn't do that with each other. We love each other. We're married. We're a couple. We're going to make it work. But we didn't take this test to go, okay, well, these are Jason's hot buttons. And right.
Yeah. And I think, it took way too long for us to figure out and like way too many tough conversations and frustration on both ends to figure out you're not actually loving any of these things, which is why you're not doing them and they're falling through the cracks. So like, let's just take them off your plate so that we're both happy. Yeah. And, I think if we could, as couples, of course, there are jobs that I do that I don't necessarily love, but over the years, we've slowly gotten to a point of like, let's take off the things that we don't love to do and add more room for things that we do love to do that we're really good at so that we can thrive in the positions that we are in and that we love them. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that you have to sit down by yourself really and think about, what do you love about what you're doing? What do you not love? What are you good at? And you need to like put into these columns and figure out what are you good at and what do you love? And those are the things that you should stick to. And the other thing as a couple, especially for someone who is the person that started the company, like you have to realize that expectations have to be, it's an interesting situation because, you want to get things done, but then you also have to have this personal life, and not everyone, no matter if it's a spouse or anyone else, they're not going to do it the same way. And likely they're going to do it better once they figure it out and get the systems going. Right. But I think, for sometimes it's like, oh man, I didn't do it that way or didn't get done that way. Like, is it getting done? Is it getting done well? Okay, let's move on and let that person be in that lane. Because I think even still sometimes now, like you'll get frustrated with me or, we'll have a conversation and it's because I'm jumping into something from the gym that I need to be doing nothing with.
Stay in your lane, girl.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about this. I mean, as a coach, as a gym owner, what do we focus on as nutrition coaches? One habit at a time, right? So when we start going, okay, I need you to do these 7 things, automatically, I'm going to start failing at something. I need to learn one thing, get good at it, and then move to the next thing. And then as that goes on, I habit stack. Does that sound familiar? I mean, that's what we do, right? And so what's different? Really nothing, right? I mean, it's the same way, especially with someone that's maybe a little older and that doesn't have that computer skill set, or just different, right? We have different strengths and weaknesses.
We get it. There's an age difference. Okay.
You said it.
So, I think that's a piece of it. And then you also have to understand, we had Tim Arnold on the podcast last week. He talks about healthy tension. And one of the tensions that he talks about is profit and purpose. And I think this one really, really is good for us because I am so biased on the purpose side and I do not focus on the numbers at all. And that is a weakness. I am well aware of it. And you keep me in check and we have conversations about it. Like you're all about the purpose too, but you also are like, Nicole,
we can't have negative $20,000 in 1 month. We have to always go to the positive side.
You can't spend $50,000 on
when we make
media.
20.
And, the thing is at the end of the day, you have to understand as an individual, what is your bias, and surround people that don't have the same bias, or else you're going to be only seeing your company through one lens. So, it was a great conversation. I highly recommend anyone listening to this podcast, go listen to that Healthy Tension podcast, because it truly has helped us be able to work really well together and understand. So, once you define those lanes, I think the second biggest tip is communicating often and intentionally. There are ways to say something. It doesn't really matter what you say. It matters how you say it. And I will admit, I am not the best.
Me neither. I mean, that's any married couple, I think. I mean, who gets on your nerves better than anybody in the world? Your spouse can, but then also you'll go to bat for them. And if someone tries to hurt them, they're not going to be alive. Right. So it's the weirdest thing, right? No, but I mean, it's so weird how we can get on, any spouse can get on it's like a brother and sister, right? But it's a little different than that. But you get on each other's nerves sometimes, or whatever happens, or the way you say it or the way you address it. And I think a lot of that communication, being honest about everything, that's one thing that I feel like we're really good at. If there's a situation and you feel like I'm doing something that we normally don't do, or somebody's in a position and we want to help them, but we talk about it. We talk about it as a family. We talk about it as business partners. And we do the same thing with our kids. I mean, if there's something, we have a family meeting and we talk about it, and we listen to each other, and we hear the why. Why are we going to do this? Okay. And then we decide as a family. And I think that's important, because not always I'm going to agree with what you want to do with the business, right, and vice versa. But we always come to an understanding, and we lean on each other.
For sure. I think as you're starting to work together, and, I think it's a constant intentional communication with feedback and how you're giving feedback, right?
Yeah,
even
this is good.
Even yesterday. So a couple days ago, Jay's doing a free intro, and luckily we do some of them on Zoom. So it's super easy for me to overhear if he's doing it from one office and I'm in my office, what we're saying it right now in our home. And I heard him doing a free intro, and we won't go into the details, but I was like, okay, this is a learning experience. And I think at the beginning of us working together, I would not have handled it the same way. But instead, I was like, hey, I would love for you to just listen to that Zoom recording. And then let's talk about it.
I would love not to, actually. I mean, mentors on our team, how uncomfortable and great would it be if Nicole was just sitting in the other room listening to all your calls? I mean, that'd be awesome, right? Coming from my perspective, and again, I said this at the beginning of the podcast, I've been a defensive person. I know, when someone, especially your spouse, wants to try to tell you something or make you better, or that's like having them judge you in a competition or whatever. It's sometimes hard to hear that, but over the years, I've become more open to it. Nicole has approached it in a way that doesn't seem like she's attacking me, right? And I've been more like, hey, I want to be better. And so she said, hey, you should listen to that. And I fought it for a day. And I went back through and listened to that Zoom call. And first of all, she signed up. I still nailed it. But I listened to that recording, and it was tough. It was really tough for me. I took a page worth of notes. It was all about me. It was conversations that I did not handle as well as
you're going to beat yourself up. We won't go into the details, but the point is hey, let's just have a conversation about it. Why don't you reflect on, see how things go? You did a great job. There were just a couple of tweaks that I overheard that I was like, hey, maybe we should do this a little bit differently. And you can, and it was, instead of me saying hey, you did this wrong or do this instead, it was let's reflect on what you think that could have happened. And then let me give you some tips. I think so many times we're all in this systemic way of thinking okay, it's all about a checklist, when in reality, letting people actually think and come up to their own conclusions is going to be so much more powerful when we're talking about growing as a person, as a couple, as a business.
Couldn't agree more. If Nicole would have told me, hey, this is how I maybe would have talked about this or this, I probably would have remembered it then for an hour or two. And then come next week, I'm going to get on a call with somebody and I wouldn't have learned. I would have gone back to that old way. And now I'm super aware of exactly what I need to do differently to make that conversation just flow a little easier. And it's going to be better for all of us. And And I'm thankful that you asked me to do that. I mean, I could have easily just not done it, and it would have got under your skin probably. And I think that's the other thing too, is you've got to work together. Like there's things that I don't love to do sometimes. And I'm like, but it's going to make me better. So I've got to get out of that comfort zone. And it's tough to get out of that comfort zone sometimes when we get stuck. I think we all get stuck, and that's part of growing and getting better, right?
Absolutely. Okay. So communicating well and maybe asking like your spouse, hey, reflect on this and see like, it's easy to reflect on things when you can go back and listen. Right.
Sure. Absolutely.
So like if we didn't have that Zoom recording, it would have been tough for you to be able to reflect back on that call. You probably wouldn't have picked up on the things.
Nope.
Which is one of the reasons why I love doing some free intros on Zoom, because then we can go back, like some of our nutrition coaching calls are on Zoom. So we can pull them, listen to the coaches, have them listen to it and reflect back on what they can do better, which is amazing way to learn. Instead of me telling you what to do, why don't you listen to it? You come up with your own feedback and then let's talk about it to make you better. So communicating often. I think the third thing, which is something that we're intentional about, but we still struggle with, is being intentional to prioritize your relationship. So, turning it off at 6 o'clock. I've been to quite a few different therapists over the years. And, it's easy for people to say like, oh, just stop talking about, your business at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Like, I don't know a business owner that can actually do that, because we don't do that. Like there are things that come up, there are Slack messages that come through, whatever the case may be, that'll spark a conversation. But I do think, and you especially are so intentional with saying like, hey, we're getting away. We have a vacation on the books that's just you and I, that we can go somewhere, unplug, disconnect. The first vacation we actually went on and didn't do any work was this year, right?
Yeah, with TJ and Shayla.
So much fun. We went to Africa and it was just a great time to connect with each other. And I think so many times business owners, we get so in the weeds with work and life and all these things that we forget to like, hey, we have to step back and actually enjoy our relationship too, because isn't that what life's about?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, now, does this mean things aren't going to come up? I mean, over the last 3 years, we've had 2 employees resign. One of them was on like the first day of spring break with our family on a vacation. And that does come up. It happens. Yeah. And you know what? That's a situation where, okay, well, that morning we're going to take care of it and then we'll move on and we'll enjoy the rest of our vacation. But being mindful of that, trying to shut it down, it's tough, guys. I mean, even our pastor, TJ and Shayla, we say, how do you guys do it? And they're like, how do you guys do it? Because nobody knows how to do it really well. And there's sometimes that we enjoy doing that. We'll go to Marco Island. We'll be sitting out at 7 a.m. with our coffee, looking at the beach, and we both have our laptops open. And that's that's our first hour of the day. We knock out whatever we want to do. And then there's other times when that doesn't happen at all. Finding that healthy balance, I think it's going to be different for everybody. There's times when like, okay, hey, I need to shut it down. Can we talk about this? Can we table it? Right? Can we table this till tomorrow? If there's something that you want to talk about, there's times where I have an idea and it's like this, we need to talk about this now. And then there's times where I can put it in my notes section. And then tomorrow we're going to go through my notes and vice versa. And we're going to address those issues. And it's tough. I don't know that there's an answer. I don't know that there's a book. It's like, how do you raise a child? Let me know when you find that book. So it's tough, right?
Yeah, I think you really just have to figure out what's going to work well for you, but also prioritizing your relationship is so important. Like we go on a date night. I look forward to that. We go on vacations. We do stuff with us as a family, but then we also do stuff with us too, which is so important. So, when you think about working with your spouse, there's not a one size fits all model, but there are some amazing people, especially in the CrossFit community, that do it so well. And I think when I think of all the couples that do it well, when I think of Dan and Amy Hollingsworth, like they've worked together, their gym's been open for like 15 years.
Yep.
Jocelyn and Barry with CrossFit Generation, they've been open for, I think, 15 years as well. Like Rob is going to soon be bringing, hopefully, I think there's so many couples that do it so well. And I think they all follow these 3 things. They define the roles that they're doing. They stay in their lane. They communicate often, and they also prioritize their relationship. And when you think of being able to work with your spouse, it can't just be about work and it can't just be about the relationship. There has to be a balance there to be able to build a successful business so that you can have the impact you want in the community.
Yeah. And I'm going to go a little further and make Nicole probably a little uncomfortable, but we sometimes Donald Miller said this from Storybrand. He said, when him and his wife, Betsy, aren't having this, when they don't feel connected, right? When your stress level is at like a 9 and your spouse's stress level is at a 9, and then the kids are like, being kids. And then all of a sudden you don't feel like sometimes you're not meshing, And he said, what we do is one of us will go up to each other and go, hey, I don't feel connected to you. And so that's an opportunity to get connected. And again, I'm going to make Nicole a little uncomfortable here, but we schedule time for us too. Like it might be in the middle of the day. It might be on a Wednesday and say, hey, do you have time for me? And so if she's got a break in that day, and that's some time that we spend together, you know what I'm talking about. But I think that's got to be important too, because guys, that is something that, we're wired a little differently, and women, you're wired a little differently. And I think that you have to find that time for each other too. It's important.
Yep.
What are you doing this afternoon?
It wouldn't be a podcast with you without you saying something inappropriate. So we're going to wrap up here. And I hope you enjoy this podcast episode. Working with your spouse is absolutely, I personally think it's been the most rewarding thing that we get to do this together. We get to travel together. Jason's home every single night. We're able to raise the kids together and really have the impact and be able to achieve, growth as a couple together, which is amazing.
And our kids get to see that. And how important is that as a generational, what legacy do you want to leave for your kids? You want them to see you dancing in the kitchen, kissing each other, being happy, or, going in two separate directions, and they don't get to see what a mom and dad and a husband and wife, what that really, that I want them to be inspired to meet someone that has a relationship the way we do, because that's really important to me. And I feel like we're doing that, and it just comes easy for us. And I hope you guys get a takeaway from this. And I hope that we answered some questions and maybe help some of you guys out with this.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode. I know working with your spouse isn't right for everyone, but I'm thankful that we have some amazing couples that have helped us along the way to figure out how do you work with your spouse and still have this awesome relationship at home and have a thriving business together. Well, Jason and I have had so much fun working together, and I'm so thankful for all of his hard work and passion to help Healthy Steps Nutrition make the biggest impact possible. If you are going to the Healthy Steps Nutrition live workshop, you want to make sure that you get your tickets today. We are already 50% sold out of this event. It's going to be September 16th and 17th in Nashville, Tennessee, with some amazing sponsors, guest speakers, panelists. It's going to be so much fun. A weekend of connecting with other gym owners, talking about things like how to work with your spouse and other things that have been working well with the gym owners over the past few years and things that have not gone well. Well, I hope we get to meet you in person. Jason is actually going to be the MC for the weekend. He has been voluntold, but I think he's going to do an amazing, amazing job. Well, I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Don't forget to grab your tickets to the live workshop, and please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review. We'll see you back here next week.